Hey guys, I'm Fallen Messiah and welcome to another Diablo 4 video. As most of you are probably already aware, we had a campfire chat stream a couple of days ago, where devs talked about all the new things coming up in Season 8. Now, while I will talk a little bit about the upcoming changes and the PTR, most of other Diablo content creators have already covered the most important news anyway. I would like to do something a little different and take the opportunity to actually place all these changes into a proper context, because context is king. I want to talk a little about the current place of Diablo 4 inside the ARPG stratosphere, the future of the game, and the present. What Diablo 4 is and what it is not. So join me together in this deep dive of Diablo 4. But before we do so, just a gentle reminder that if you do like these kind of videos, consider subscribing, as it helps a lot and also lets me know that you enjoy it. Now let's get straight to it. First, I'd like to address the fact that, unfortunately, it seems that we're not getting any massive endgame updates for the veterans of the genre. Something that we can really sink our teeth into. So, if this was something that you were expecting, I'm afraid I have some bad news. Simply put, it seems that with Season 6, Diablo 4 dev team have finally found a template that works for them. After many different iterations of some core gameplay systems like leveling, Paragon, etc., Season 6 saw some very key changes, such as reduction of level cap to 60, a revamped Paragon leveling system, as well as new tournament difficulties. It seems that ever since Season 6, it finally feels like the dev team have found their footing. And it shows. The game feels like a polished, complete product. And that is why I am not surprised at the fact that we're getting mostly more of the same, but more on that later. So let's address the elephant in the room. No, Season 8 will not be introducing any crucial endgame to appease the blasters and the hardcore players. And Diablo 4 likely won't be introducing it for the foreseeable future going forward. In some of my previous videos, I have talked about where Diablo 4 wants to stand within the ARPG space. Jack of all trades, master of none. It doesn't wish to be the most complex game out there. Quite the contrary, it prides itself on its accessibility and friendliness to newcomers and people with limited time to play. And make no mistake, I don't think that's a bad thing. Diablo 4 does not wish to be and will never be another Path of Exile. Path of Exile already exists. And frankly, while I think that Diablo 4 would benefit from more complexity, ultimately, I understand this approach. It's good that we have different games for different audiences, so that everyone can find something that works for them best. Where do I stand in all of this? I think that in this current state, Diablo 4 is a great game. I wouldn't be playing it on a daily basis if I thought otherwise. I certainly wouldn't be making content around it. Does it have potential to be amazing? Absolutely. But even if it remains in the current state forever, which it likely won't, I would ultimately have a great time. For instance, I found myself having probably the most fun this season out of any I played yet. Builds are really fun, witch powers are great to play with, and overall there's just a lot of things to do. And speaking of things to do, I hear this complaint often on social media. Diablo 4 lacks things to do. Even without a proper endgame system, I strongly disagree with that statement. Let me explain. If you told me this prior to Season 5 or 6, I would have absolutely agreed. But now, I find the gameplay loop very satisfying with enough of variety to keep you engaged. Just a quick rundown, we have Helltides, Headhunt Zones, Bounties, Nightmare Dungeons, Undercity, Infernal Hordes, Dark Citadel, and more. Not every content is equally engaging or useful, but it is out there. What especially irks me is that a lot of this comes from the veterans of the genre. When I hear this, the first thought that comes to my mind is, how do their characters look? Are they min-maxed? Or do they just barely meet the build requirements? And why would something like that even matter, you ask? Well, the real endgame to Diablo 4 isn't hitting the Torment 4 wall and blasting through content, or even clearing Pit 100. Great, so you cleared Pit 100, but can you clear Pit 120? Do you see where I'm going with this? It's finding a build that works for you and then pushing it to its limits. Here's one example. You're playing a Bloodwave Necromancer. First of all, is your gear masterworked fully? And if it is, did you hit the most important tempers 3 times? And if you did, Did you get a greater affix on your skill passives? Let's say you have an amulet that looks like this. But if you work to getting an amulet that looks like this, suddenly your damage output increases significantly. Maybe you're already bored out of your mind just by looking at this example, and you don't like playing the game like that. Personally, I don't blame you at all. But here's the thing. The ultimate endgame in any ARPG is the min-maxing game. It's not the most exciting stuff out there, but that is the end goal for the most devoted hardcore blasters out there. Any other game content is just a means to that end. Let me illustrate that with another example. This is a call to arms rune word in Diablo 2. Now, if you never played Diablo 2, rune words are a self-crafted items that have potential to be very powerful. This one gives you access to 3 barbarian shouts, regardless of your class, and the skill ranks go up to 6, 6, and 4 respectively. 664 CTA is a perfect item and is quite valuable. Currently valued at around 20 to 36 jaw runes at tradery.com. Not sponsored, by the way. 663 CTA, on the other hand, sells for almost 3 times less. One less skill point to Battlecry is completely irrelevant to almost any build, but only one of these items is perfect. And that's why sometimes it bothers me when I hear that there are no things to do in the game. Especially when even if min-maxing is not your thing, if you hit a reasonable wall with one build or class, you can simply make another. Pick a build that fulfills a different fantasy from the one that you just played to keep things fresh. But with all of that said, and in light of trying to be as objective as possible, one thing the game severely lacks is the reason for the hardcore blasters to min-max in the first place. Even if that is the real endgame in an ARPG, what good does it do if all these superpowered builds have no real competition to be properly tested? The pit alone just doesn't cut it because the players there are really only competing with themselves. To me, that's enough, but to many others it isn't. So enter leaderboards. It is quite absurd that we still won't get leaderboards after a full 7 seasons of the game. In the Q&A portion of the stream, they have confirmed that they are thinking about it, but it is likely not even in development yet. Why is the leaderboard so important? Because it's a simple, easy way to add a lot of depth to the game, especially for the hardcore players who, as we talked about earlier, feel they don't have a lot to do. It would create a new competitive element that is missing from Diablo 4 at the moment. And just in general also create a healthy competition that would allow players to push themselves against others as opposed to just themselves. Diablo 4 also doesn't really have to reinvent the wheel here. Previous game in the series, Diablo 3, already does leaderboards really well. In fact, I would say that it was one of the biggest draws for the game and one of the things that kept it alive all these years. In the Diablo 3 leaderboard system, you rank by class, and then you can see the class rating for the first 1000 players with the best time. You can then inspect the gear and skills that the player had at the time of the ranking, just in case you wish to optimize your own ranking, or if you're only curious. Players can see what setup the top ranking players are using and then attempt to emulate it. It's all very simple stuff, but effective and works quite well. If anything, leaderboards will be even more competitive in Diablo 4 because top-ranking players wouldn't have thousands of paragon levels of advantage to others, and because trading also exists. For those who wish to have a different experience than just playing the pit over and over, Diablo 4 can also add a separate paragon leaderboard to track who hits the max level first. Having your feat officially recognized is a much better incentive for farming XP. You could also provide the players who manage to rank in any leaderboard with cool achievements, titles, and other such fluff. Now, that's not to say that leaderboards will fix every single issue the game has, but it is a major step forward in the right direction. And again, it's baffling that we're still not here yet. Now that we talked about the current state of Diablo 4 and, in my opinion, the biggest omission, let's talk a bit about the actual patch notes for Season 8 and where they all fit together in the current state of the game. Now, just to reiterate, I won't be covering every single change, just those that seem most important to me. Let's start with the Torment difficulty rescaling. Torment in general gets harder. That's a good change. We should never have more than 4 Torment levels, so if the current endgame which they wish Torment 4 to be, seems to be too attainable. Some adjustments are needed. Devs keep calling Torment 4 as aspirational content. I'm not sure how much I agree with that. In theory, sure. In practice though, most people want to hit that milestone eventually, as there is a certain fear of missing out. And sure, Torment 4 offers the same rewards as Torment 1, again, in theory. But if, for example, Torment 4 Duriel has 5% chance to drop a mythic, while Torment 1 Duriel only has 1% chance, it's easy to understand why most people would prefer to engage in highest difficulty. Also, a very justified complaint of some people online was that some seasonal journey feats for this season require Torment 4 activities. You can't call Torment 4 aspirational and at the same time lock a cool feature like a flying pet behind it. Other noticeable change is the rescaling of the leveling process. Again, generally a fan of that. I like the fantasy of leveling up and getting stronger, unlocking stronger items and powers as I go. I think Diablo 4 lost a part of that fantasy by lowering the level cap from 100 to 60, and also as the pace of the game increases and the power creep magnifies, leveling process continues to be trivialized season after season. So generally I like this change, but it remains to be seen how impactful it will really be. And now for the meat and potatoes of the next season, the boss ladder revamp. They introduced 3 new bosses: Uribar, Dog Mephisto, and Belial. They have also said that they revamped the fights to introduce the new mechanics and just in general make them a little more challenging. I like that too. I think they made such a cool villain in Uribar in the Vessel of Hatred campaign, but failed to really utilize him to his fullest extent. So at least he gets a bit of a redemption arc by being a part of a regular boss ladder. Dog Mephisto looks cool as well. Now, boss rotation is a thing of the past, as all the bosses will be free to summon and we are paying with materials to open the loot chest, just like in Helltides. And I say, thank the high heavens for that. I don't think anyone really enjoyed the boss loadout, especially not in public where people are just hard to deal with sometimes. When things go smoothly, it was tolerable. But that was a rare experience. More often than not, someone would either not stick to our rotation or try to leech off of others. But we still partook in it because it was a good way to spread out the value of our materials and to stretch them a little bit further. Still, I'm glad to see it go. Now, new ladder looks something like this. This is an actual slide from the stream, by the way, and it looks kinda awful. But basically, we have 3 tiers of bosses. Common bosses are Larshan, Grigor, Beast of Ice, Lord Zir, and Uribar. Then we have the exalted bosses, which are Dariel, Duriel, and Dog Mephisto. And finally, we have the final challenge of Belial, who returns back from Diablo 3 as the pinnacle boss in the new system. There are a couple of quality of life changes. All bosses need the same number of mats for the loot chest, so the mental math we have to do now will be a thing of the past. Boss layers also come with an improved UI. You can see the name of the boss on the map, the mats needed, and also, finally, we can teleport straight to them. Took us 8 seasons for that, but baby steps. Now, my immediate complaint after the stream finished was that despite all of the quality of life changes we're getting to the boss ladder, we are still not getting any kind of blacksmith/anvil that will show up after the boss is dead to quickly salvage the extra items. That change alone would help tremendously with the decluttering of the main boss area, and reduce the number of trips to town needed during sessions. I was so anxious to see them announce it, but as the stream was coming to an end, I realized they're still not giving it to us. I cannot stress how much that is pissing me off. Take a look at this picture. This is the reality that players have to deal with in the current boss layer system. Now, new bosses will drop 1 unique less than they do now, and the devs think that this will solve the issue, but that is simply not true. It will only take more time until we run into the exact same problem. But make no mistake, this scene will be a staple of Season 8, just like it is right now. Now, let's talk about Belial. I like their choice for the new boss. Belial fight in Diablo 3 was always one of the coolest ones, both in terms of mechanics and just visual appeal. In Diablo 3, Belial comes in two main variants. A humanoid demon form that is rather weak, and once you almost kill him, he transforms into his second form, a giant eldritch horror. They had decided to use both of these forms in Diablo 4 as well. The weaker form, or Baby Belial as they have dubbed him, will be a random encounter after killing any of the bosses. Just like Grotesque Debtor randomly spawns. If you kill Baby Belial, he drops the same loot you would get from the boss that you killed right before, essentially doubling your spoils. Now from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Baby Belial drops mats to summon his pinnacle version. I'm not sure how much I agree with that decision to have the ultimate boss fight locked behind a random encounter, but we'll see. What also bothers me is the loot that the pinnacle Belial drops. Basically, he has no special loot on his own, but instead, upon death, you get to select which boss table you'd like him to emulate. So for example, if you're aiming for something that only the exalted bosses drop, like Andy or Duriel, you select them, and then Belial drops from that boss table, but only better. Personally, I think that's a cheap cop-out, and a very unsatisfying finish to what is supposedly a very challenging fight, and the final boss in the game. I feel that it cheapens the experience, and I would much rather have him drop something interesting, powerful, and unique to him. I hope this gets changed. The second part of the season are the new seasonal powers. This time, we get to borrow from the actual bosses themselves. I really like the new powers, and I like that they kinda threw subtlety out of the window. New powers are very flashy and you immediately take notice. Fittingly, you unlock the powers of each boss after killing them. In a way, I think that's quite cool. I won't waste too much time talking about the mechanics of each power. You can check the full patch notes for that yourself. Instead, I would like to talk about seasonal powers in general. This is basically more of the same that we're having this season, just branded and packaged a bit differently. Not surprisingly, a lot of people are bored of the concept, but I actually quite like the idea of the seasonal powers. I think they do a good job of complementing the base game and adding another layer of complexity and customizability. For example, they really nailed it with the witch powers this season, and if they keep the same quality going forward, I don't mind the idea of having different sets of seasonal powers every season. I think the bigger problem is simply not having new things or a proper endgame added, but the powers themselves are good in my book. And before I finish my PTR impressions, a few extra things to add that I care about. New uniques for every class, as is tradition. Most builds that are overperforming right now are getting straight up nerfed to the ground, including two that I'm playing this season, Cataclysm Druid and Earthquake Barb. For Cataclysm, they specifically mentioned they hate the idea of snapshotting, so they straight up killed it. I get it. I don't like snapshotting too, which is why in my Cataclysm Druid guide, I specifically made a non-snapshot variant too. But the problem is that the snapshot version can clear Pit 150, while non-snapshot version really starts to struggle after Pit 85+. That is several orders of magnitude difference in power. So by killing it, while not replacing that power difference with anything else, you're basically killing the endgame potential of the build. So that kinda bums me out because it's one of my favorite builds that I've ever played in the game, and I hate having it nerfed to the ground. So if you still didn't check out my build, do it. It's super fun and you might not get the chance next season. Earthquake Barb also getting huge nerfs. I understand that it was overperforming, but again, I don't agree with the philosophy of gutting overperforming builds completely. With all the changes, I'm estimating that the build will be about 80% weaker than it is right now. That's a lot. Surely there is a middle ground out there to explore. And before I bring this video to a close, one nice little change is that we'll finally be able to teleport to our party members without specifically going to the main town first, by doing it straight from the social tab. However, in Diablo 3 you can simply right-click your party member's portrait and TP without the added extra step. They were so close to getting it right. Again, baby steps. And that just about wraps up this video. What do you think about where the game is right now and where it's heading? What changes would you like to see in the future? What is your opinion about this PTR? Will you play it or will you pass? Let me know down in the comments. I read everything and always try to reply. Also, if you disagree with any of my points and think I missed the mark completely, let me know, let's have a conversation. Also, these videos take a long time to make, so if you enjoy them, please consider subscribing. It's free and it really helps a ton. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Fallen Messiah, and I'll see you in the next one.